This area might just be the most important spot in America right now, as it is worth over $1 trillion. There's something incredibly valuable hidden right here at Thacker Pass, and it is going to shake things up, not just in Nevada, but in the US economy and its global relations. The McDermott Caldera is a massive area, about 28 miles long by 22 miles wide, stretching across northern Nevada and southern Oregon. It's in Humboldt County, a quiet, rural place with just one main city that's going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. That's because they found white gold there. We're talking about lithium. And to explain why this metal is so important, we need a scale. On one side, we place a chunk of lithium, and on the other, an apple. What do you think will happen? If both have the same volume, the scale is going to tip toward the apple. That's because lithium is super light. Its density is about 0.3 ounces per cubic inch, which makes it the lightest solid you can find at room temperature. Lithium is also extremely reactive. That means it combines with other elements very easily, and it can catch fire just as easily. Mix it with water, fire. Expose it to air, yep, fire again. But when you combine its lightness with its high reactivity, you get a material that's perfect for batteries, like the one powering your smartphone, laptop, or even your electric car. Nevada's been hiding this treasure for about 16 million years. The McDermott Caldera used to be a volcanic hotspot, spewing molten rock and creating a huge lake filled with mineral-rich waters. Over time, that lake dried up, leaving behind thick layers of clay loaded with lithium. Right now, Thacker Pass mine is sitting on one of the biggest untapped lithium reserves in the world, worth about $1.5 trillion. If everything goes as planned, they expect it to produce about 40,000 tons of high-quality lithium a year. And that's enough to make batteries for up to 800,000 electric cars. Like I mentioned earlier, this metal is the backbone of modern batteries. And with the world racing toward green energy, the demand for lithium is skyrocketing. Since 2020, its price has gone up more than 10 times, making it the most expensive battery metal in the world. That means it's way more expensive than magnesium, nickel, cobalt, and other materials used in rechargeable batteries. Right now, we're using about 1.16 million tons of lithium per year, and roughly 85% of it goes into making batteries, mostly for cars. Between 2030 and 2040, experts think we will need to double the money we're putting into production, from $94 billion to $188 billion. At the same time, investment in batteries will jump by over 200%, reaching $686 billion. Finally, by 2050, the demand for lithium is expected to be more than 10 times higher than what we're producing now. Sorry, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I just want to show how important Thacker Pass will be for the whole world. This mine is going to be key to keeping everything running. I mean, literally, since most of the future demand will be for things like cars, electric bikes, scooters, and renewable energy storage. Nevada could also be the epicenter of a global energy revolution, with the US aiming to cut pollution by 50% by 2030. A big part of that is replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric ones. And to make that happen, America is going to need a whole lot more lithium than it's producing right now. Nowadays, most of the metal used in the United States come from countries like Chile and Argentina. So if America wants to be a leader in this market, it really needs to invest more and more in projects like Thacker Pass. But there's another challenge. Finding lithium in a mine is one thing, but refining it is another story. Just like diamonds are carefully cut and shaped to bring out their sparkle and sold in rings and necklaces, something similar needs to be done with lithium. The raw material that comes from the mines has to be refined into a pure form that can actually be used in things like batteries. And China pretty much dominates this part of the market, and they're responsible for about 75% of global lithium-ion battery production. In other words, it doesn't matter if a country finds this powerful metal on its land, it will probably still need China to help refine it. So, the US is eager to strengthen its supply chain. In fact, they're so excited about this possibility that authorities have invested over $2 billion in loans into the Nevada project. Because of that, Thacker Pass could make the US a leader in lithium production worldwide. If their estimates are right, the McDermott Caldara could hold nearly half of the world's known lithium reserves. It would almost double the reserves found in Bolivia's salt flats, for example, which used to hold the record for the world's largest deposit. This discovery is about to change Humboldt County for good. Those quiet streets surrounded by nature will never feel the same again. The mine will need about 2,000 workers who will probably move there from other cities. Those workers will need houses, hospitals, schools for their kids, and all the necessary services. Do you see how it's like a ripple effect? For every person hired to work on the project during construction, 6 more people will get hired in the state to support them. Thacker Pass is also going to have a huge impact on the economy, not just in Nevada, but all across the country. People expect the mine to be active for 35 years, and each year it's expected to generate over $2 billion. But here's the thing. In Thacker Pass, they'll be extracting lithium from clay, and this process has never been done on such a huge scale before. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But if it works, it could completely change the industry. Big question. Who's interested in all this? Well, we've got 3 big companies eyeing the lithium market in the US. First, there's ExxonMobil. The oil giant wants to start producing lithium by 2027, and they have plans to become the top supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Then there's General Motors, the company behind big car brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac. They're so interested in this business that they agreed to pay $625 million for a 38% stake in Thacker Pass. And finally, Tesla. In 2023, they started building a factory in Texas to process lithium. It's all part of their plan to handle more of their supply chain themselves. Now that you know how important lithium is, you might be wondering, what if we run out? Well, that could happen, since it comes from mining and, just like gold, is a finite resource. But that doesn't mean we'd have to give up smartphones or electric cars. If we ever run out of this metal, we'd probably find new ways to produce batteries. In fact, some experts think thermal batteries could be the next big thing. They store extra energy from renewable resources like wind or solar power, which are very cheap. So they represent a new way of storing energy at a small fraction of the cost. Nowadays, they're primarily used for powering the production of steel, cement, and chemicals. Thermal batteries are also being used to heat and cool large buildings. However, more and more projects are focusing on bringing this technology into private spaces, like houses and apartments. Experts are optimistic that initiatives like these could make thermal batteries as well known as electric batteries, and they might soon become a regular part of our daily lives. For every 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit increase in a country's average temperature, the GDP per capita drops by at least 1.1%. To put it simply, with every step you take from the North Pole to the equator, not only do you get hotter, but you also get poorer. Even though life in freezing cold countries can seem miserable, 74.2% of the world's billionaires are concentrated in the global north. And there are at least 4 theories explaining that. The simplest theory is tied to biology. Cold weather is believed to keep germs away, leading to better health and productivity. Sounds good, but I'll challenge that later. Next, there's the sloth theory from ancient Greece, and it's more about climate in general. Greeks believed their ideal weather made them wealthier, while hotter regions were seen as less creative. The third idea is based on economic and anthropological studies. You see, experts noticed some time ago that colder countries have inclusive institutions that offer equal job and life opportunities and protect markets and private property. Naturally, such conditions promote healthy competition and boost wealth. The last idea is tightly connected to the previous one. Long story short, richer countries tend to distribute money better because they're more inclusive. Poorer nations often have extractive institutions where a powerful elite controls wealth. While all of them seem plausible, the truth is, these ideas are borderline insane. Well, you know the theory claiming that cold climates eliminates germs and the population of colder countries doesn't get so sick? I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but the cold actually makes germs thrive. In the cold, we tend to stay inside with the whole house shut, so we share germs with each other more easily. Not only that, but during winter, the air is drier, creating the perfect environment for the flu virus to flourish. Humans are also more resistant to viruses and bacteria from their own environment because the constant contact with them makes our immune system stronger. If you look back at your history classes, you might remember that most British people struggled with the weather and bacteria found in America, while Native Americans themselves were mostly fine. And what about the sloth theory? Sorry, I don't mean it to sound offensive, but some specialists, they claim that, people in hotter countries tend to be lazier. But the truth is, the sun doesn't make us work less. Yes, the sun can make you a bit slower because you can dehydrate. But you see, the human body is biologically adapted to the climate of the place they're born in. This means that if you live in Canada, for example, you can endure the cold just fine. But Brazilians will probably handle hot days better than you. But if the sloth theory was true, how would you explain that people in Colombia work about 200 hours a year more than those from the United States? In fact, if you live in Cambodia, Myanmar, or Mexico, you're bound to work more than anyone in the world. Besides, hotter countries have a genius way to fight off laziness. It's called siesta. After lunch, it's normal to feel a bit sleepy, and if you have heavier meals like the Spanish and Italians do, you'll get extra slow. This is why after lunch they usually have a siesta, also known as a quick nap, which improves your memory and thinking skills. It may sound like a siesta makes you work less, but people who nap after lunch simply work at different hours of the day. While you make shorter lunch breaks and go home at 6 p.m., in Spain, the lunch break lasts 2 hours and the workday ends at 8 p.m. They work when it's not so hot outside and even get to take a power nap. The past is also crowded with people who lived rich lives despite the scorching sun. The ancient Egypt civilization may have existed thousands of years ago, but they were one of the richest civilizations ever, even though they lived in a place that was super hot and super dry. We also have the Aztecs, who lived in Mexico back when Mexico didn't exist yet. This region is not so famous for its cold weather, I can tell you that. But the Aztec civilization still managed to have a capital that was bigger than London, Paris, and Madrid of the time. On top of that, many of the inventions we have today that make a lot of people rich were created thanks to math and science. Two things born in hot places, like Mesopotamia and India. Now, to make all those economic and anthropological studies sound simpler, let's start with the most obvious part. It's true that hotter countries usually make money out of their natural resources. They don't have such strong industries, and the money is concentrated in the hands of the elite. All of this reduces the GDP, that thing that estimates whether a country is wealthy or not. Remember we said richer countries have inclusive institutions? These institutions are basically laws that make sure people have equal job and life opportunities, including nice houses and a good salary. Poor countries are not very good at this inclusive institution thing, but it's not by choice. This is actually a consequence of the age of exploration. In case you were sleeping during your history classes, let me remind you, the age of exploration is that time between the 15th and 17th centuries, when many kingdoms in Europe were exploring the seas and setting up colonies all over the world. I know it feels like this was a long time ago, but many countries that were colonies back then only became independent during the 20th and 21st century. This is why many poor countries don't have solid industries and markets, because their institutions and laws date back to when they were still colonies, and their years as colonies depleted resources and didn't provide a good infrastructure. Besides, saying that private property reduces the income and inequality gap is kind of absurd. It's true that developing countries like Brazil and South Africa are highly unequal, but in the US, for example, 1% of the richest people in the country make 139 times more money than the poorest part of the population. And there were more than 700,000 homeless people in 2024. Besides, 1% of the world's population is wealthier than the rest of humankind put together. If inclusive institutions were really that powerful in richer countries, then there wouldn't be more than 1 billion people living in acute poverty all over the world. There's no point in saying that private property makes everyone's lives better if people can't even afford to have a house in the first place. And using the GDP to calculate the wealth of a country is not exactly the best way to understand poverty, because the GDP only considers how much money the industry itself makes. It ignores, for example, the question of whether people who work in those industries have good jobs, if they are well paid and have a good life. The GDP also ignores inequality, which means it ignores those inclusive institutions we mentioned before. In the United States, there are about 835 billionaires, but 11% of the American population is still very poor. So, my hot take here is that inclusive institutions are not that inclusive, and that money is not that well distributed in the first place. Different cultures also have different concepts of what it means to be wealthy. In London, for example, being able to afford food, clothes, and shelter does not make you rich. To them, you're simply surviving. If you want to be truly wealthy in London, you might have to hire a housekeeper, buy a horse, and have a personal Pilates instructor. But to the Awa or the Yanomami tribes, money doesn't even exist. They produce only the necessary, and if they have a surplus, they will trade with other tribes. I guess the fact that poor countries are all located closer to the equator line is not just a simple historical coincidence.
So it turns out that so-called rich countries are facing a big problem. People are not having kids. Not enough, at least. On average, women need to have 2 children to keep things balanced, but they're only having 1, or none at all. This issue comes down to the fertility rate, or simply the average number of kids a woman is expected to have in her lifetime. When that number's too low, it means more people are passing away in these countries than being born, and that can destroy the economy. Think of a rich country – the US, Germany, Japan. Great! Pick any wealthy nation you like, and I can promise you one thing. Its fertility rate is below 2.1, and that's a problem. Here's why. Meet Mary and John, and over here we've got Jack and Lucy. That's 4 people total. Now, both couples get married. Mary and John have 2 kids, but Jack and Lucy only have 1. Now, what does that mean? Simple math. We're down by 1 person. And if this keeps happening, generation after generation, the population starts to shrink. The situation gets pretty scary when we zoom in on certain countries. Take Spain, Italy, or Poland. These countries have some of the lowest fertility rates in the European Union, with women there having, on average, just 1 kid. And that's a big problem, because it drags down entire economies. Picture a triangle, young people and workers at the bottom and the elderly at the top. In many rich countries, that bottom part is shrinking fast, with fewer babies being born each year. So it's like this triangle is flipping upside down. Fewer young folks and workers, but more and more older people. With fewer workers and more retirees, the economy struggles to stay balanced. It's like the domino effect. Fewer people working means fewer people paying taxes. Meanwhile, the older population at the top keeps growing. And now we have a way bigger group depending on pensions and stuff like Social Security. So we're left asking, who's going to pay for all these retirements? Now, some countries are in hotter water than others, and South Korea is really feeling the heat. They've got more and more people getting older, while fewer and fewer babies are being born. In fact, they've got the lowest fertility rate in the world. In 2023, it hit rock bottom, 0.72 births per woman. Now, personally, I don't know how you can have 3/4 of a kid, but hey, that's statistics for you. Meanwhile, if things keep going like this, Korea's population could shrink by half by 2100. Over the last 20 years, their authorities have invested at the equivalent of $286 billion in this issue, and they've rolled out a bunch of incentives to turn things around. First up, pocket money. If a married couple in Korea decides to have their first kid, the government hands over about $10,000 split into monthly payments to help out. While that might sound impressive, it's only about 3 times the average monthly wage. And in Seoul, one of the most expensive cities in the world, that doesn't go very far. Next, a home. Paying rent in Seoul is insane, but the government doesn't want people to leave the capital because of it. So they're stepping in. Recently, they've promised to give families around $300 a month to help with housing, until the kid turns 2. Then again, $300 seems great, but it only covers about 11% of the rent for a 3-bedroom apartment in the city center. And last but not least, health care. Hospital bills are covered, but the couple must be married, on paper and everything. South Korea came up with all this to fix the problem. Otherwise, their population might get older, poorer, and more dependent on others for care. But when you think about it, all these incentives really come down to one thing: giving out cash. Even so, their demographic problem hasn't gotten any better, so the authorities had to come up with more creative solutions, like offering jobs with flexible hours for parents with kids under 5. And they can borrow things like toys or strollers from the government, totally for free. So, why don't women want to become mothers? There's a bunch of reasons. But one of the most important is work. Women are getting more education and grabbing more opportunities in the job market than ever before. But a lot of jobs have crazy hours, with people working late every single day. So many women get stuck in that cycle, waking up early, going to work, coming home late, and sleeping. Then it all starts over the next day. They don't have time to meet a partner, and even less time to raise someone. In fact, education in general is one of the biggest reasons why birth rates are dropping. Spending so many years in school, then in college, means women are pushing back the age they have their first kid. Once they finish their education, they often want to focus on work and building their careers before starting a family. So they're not becoming moms in their teens or early 20s anymore. And by the time they hit 30, things aren't much better. Sure, they might finally land a stable job, but most employment policies still don't offer enough support for childcare. But it's not only education. Younger generations are getting delayed in, well, everything. I mean, it's way harder for them to tick off all the adulting boxes, like having a well-paying job or buying a nice house. And these things are usually a big part of whether people decide to start a family or not. Another reason people aren't having kids: putting a new human into this world is expensive and time-consuming. The average childcare costs in Australia, for example, have gone up faster than inflation. School tuition, even for public schools, takes a big chunk out of parents' budgets. Think about it. Computers, uniforms, field trips, extracurricular activities – all that adds up to the cost of financing someone's education. Over 13 years, parents spend over $80,000 on public education. And if we're talking about private schools, that number jumps up to almost $350,000. And don't worry, these costs are just for one kid. Now imagine having 2 or 3. So what is the solution? Well, there are 2 ways to tackle the problem that don't involve pushing the population to have more kids. Nations can keep their population healthier and employed longer, like what Singapore is doing. They're putting a lot of effort into raising the retirement age, offering midlife training, and encouraging companies to hire older workers, like those over 69. Another way is to encourage people from other countries to come in, especially young ones who are ready to work. That's, for example, the strategy Canada uses. Now, if the goal is really to get women to have more kids, a lot of countries use the baby bonus strategy. basically giving money and benefits to families, just like South Korea does. The problem is that some experts say it is pretty ineffective, as financial incentives don't address the complexity of the issue. For them, what these wealthy countries need to do is offer better career and housing opportunities for young people, like giving incentives for companies to offer more flexible hours or work-from-home options for young parents. They also need to push strategies to lower the cost of housing, especially in big cities. Plus, they need to focus more on the aging population, using technological innovations to support them. That would help not just parents, but families as a whole. So, what do you think?
These dark patches on Greenland's ice sheet aren't just any old stains. Every summer, the ice, which is usually bright white, turns murky gray in certain areas. This so-called dark zone was a huge mystery for a long time, until some studies discovered that this weird transformation was connected to the odd appearance of red, green, and brown-colored algae. The scariest part is that this algae bloom keeps growing. The dark zone is getting darker, and terrifying microbes might start appearing. Now, the rest of the world should be concerned. The Greenland ice sheet is like a massive ice blanket that covers around 80% of the island. It's so thick that it holds about 8% of the world's freshwater ice. For most of the year, the ice looks like a giant untouched white sheet stretching over the land. But when summer rolls around and temperatures start to rise, things begin to change. The ice melts, revealing rocky areas along the coast. And as you move further inland, that once smooth white ice becomes darker. This is the dark zone, and it covers an area of around 248 miles in length and 62 miles at its widest point. This weird phenomenon happens basically for two reasons. The first one is black carbon. Just like dust that builds up on your bookshelf, the ice in Greenland has the same issue. The wind carries a mix of dust and soot to this icy area. But unlike your bookshelf, you can't just wipe it off with a cloth. In Greenland's case, this dirty mix settles on the ice and sticks around for thousands of years. So, the dark zone is basically covered in a fine layer of dust that's built up over time. Back in 2014, researchers analyzed this dirty mix and found that the darker ice areas were filled with black carbon. This black carbon didn't just appear out of thin air. Well, actually, it sorta did. Scientists believe it mostly comes from smoke produced by wildfires in northern Canada and Alaska somewhere in the past. As you might guess, black carbon is black, which is why it makes the ice look darker. Now, the second big reason for the Greenland ice sheet's summer makeover has to do with those algae we mentioned earlier. We're mostly talking about two types of it, the Ancylonema alaskana and the Ancylonema nordenskjoldii. Both of them love cold water regions. During winter, they stay in a dormant state deep within the ice. But when spring comes, they start to slowly migrate to the surface. By the time summer hits, they're ready to bloom and soak up nearly 24 hours of sunlight each day for photosynthesis and growth. Normally, these algae are green, but when exposed to sunlight, they turn brown as a natural way to protect themselves from harmful ultraviolet rays. And this color change is also what makes the ice in Greenland look darker. So far, this has been normal behavior. What's really alarming is that these algae blooms are getting bigger and bigger every year. This happens because they thrive on phosphorus, a nutrient that's plentiful out there and comes from a mineral called hydroxylapatite. This mineral is found in a type of rock that breaks down into tiny dust particles, which are then blown across the ice by the wind. As the climate gets warmer, the rocks dry out more, and stronger winds carry more dust. More dust means more phosphorus, leading to more algae growth. See? It is a cycle, and it keeps getting worse every year. Studying this is crucial to understanding why the dark zone keeps getting bigger. From the year 2000 to 2012, its size increased by 12%. But you might be wondering, why should we care? After all, it's just ice getting darker, right? Well, not exactly. Think about how you can't stand wearing black clothes on a hot, sunny day. They soak up the heat and make you feel even hotter. That's because darker surfaces absorb more sunlight. The same thing happens to ice. Together, dust, black carbon, and algae blooms are responsible for about 70% of the variability in albedo on the Greenland ice sheet. Albedo is just a fancy word for how reflective a surface is. If you take two surfaces, one white and shiny and the other dark and rough, the white one will reflect a lot of light and heat, giving it a high albedo. The dark one, on the other hand, will absorb more light and heat, so it has a low albedo. During the summer, the Greenland ice sheet experiences a reduction in albedo. This means the ice absorbs more sunlight, and when ice absorbs more sunlight, it melts faster than it should. This is why understanding what's happening in the dark zone is so important. It helps predict how quickly the Greenland ice sheet is melting and how it can affect the rest of the world. Greenland's ice sheet is the second largest in the world, covering an area about the size of all the land in the United States east of the Mississippi River. And its huge mass of ice averages a thickness of 1.4 miles. Unfortunately, the ice loss has skyrocketed. Back in the 1990s, Greenland was losing about 25 billion tons of ice per year. Now, it's losing around 234 billion tons per year. That's nearly 10 times more ice melting away each year. According to NASA, if all of Greenland's ice sheet were to melt, it would increase global sea levels by about 24 feet. That could be catastrophic for coastal countries and cities around the world. The Netherlands could be submerged, the Bahamas could be almost completely wiped out, and many of the Philippines Islands would be at risk of disappearing. All of this may seem like a distant reality, and it is true that most scientists believe it would take several hundred or even thousands of years for the ice sheet to melt completely. But it is important to know that Greenland didn't always have this thick layer of ice. Very recently, researchers took a close look at some sediment from the bottom of a 2-mile deep ice core extracted from the center of Greenland. They found that the soil had traces of willow wood, insect parts, fungi, and even poppy seeds. So these fossils are the first direct evidence that Greenland's ice sheet melted away in the recent geological past, around 400,000 years ago. At that time, Greenland was home to a green tundra landscape with insects and plants. This discovery is both fascinating and scary because it shows that the ice sheet collapsed before and might be more fragile than scientists originally thought. There is another concern too. A recent research collected meltwater from different spots on the Greenland ice sheet and found that the water samples were packed with hundreds and thousands of microbes. The concern is that they could be released into the ocean in the future. And some studies already suggest that areas near where a lot of glacial meltwater flows have a higher risk of viruses jumping to new hosts, like from animals to humans. Even though experts believe the chance of a doomsday virus coming from the glaciers is very small, it's still not zero. The truth is, we don't know much about the thousands of microbial species living on the surface of the ice, and there is simply not enough data to fully understand how dangerous these organisms might be. All of this might sound concerning, but we shouldn't panic just yet. There's still a lot we don't understand about what is darkening the Greenland ice sheet. We still need more detailed measurements of the relative abundance of dust, algae, and black carbon, as well as a better understanding of how these potentially dangerous microbes could affect our lives. The more we learn, the better we can predict what's going to happen and how we can prepare for it. How do you prepare for a long trip? You probably look up the route on Google Maps or watch a walkthrough on YouTube. Or maybe you ask someone who's been there recently. But what if you're bound for a place humans have never existed? Yes, I'm talking about our next-door neighbor, the Red Planet. NASA is planning a mission to Mars in the late 2030s or early 2040s. That's too far in the future, so why start preparing now? Well, it's closer than you think. Rookie astronauts spend at least 2 years training just to go out in space. For every hour they spend in space, they need to spend 10 hours underwater on Earth. This training only applies to spacewalks and the International Space Station. So far, some 600 people have been to space, but humans have never set foot on Mars. Traveling to this planet will require a different kind of training. Is there a region of Earth that closely resembles Mars? The Apollo mission's astronauts trained in Nevada. This is where Neil Armstrong and his fellow astronauts got a sense of what the surface of the moon would feel like. But Mars is different from the moon. It has gravity and an atmosphere. In this aspect, it resembles our own planet. Just one country, to be more precise: Iceland. NASA used this island in the far north of Europe as a testing ground for its 2020 Mars mission. And no, the mission didn't involve humans landing on the red planet. Just a small rover looking for signs of life. But the high-tech robot still needs some practice. Let's do a little test of our own. Compare the landscapes on Mars and Iceland. Are you struggling to spot the difference? Good. That means that scientists have picked the ideal training grounds for the upcoming Mars mission. An area entirely barren and devoid of life. That's how one researcher involved in the mission described Iceland. And this description perfectly matches the conditions future astronauts will encounter on Mars. But what's so special about Iceland? There are valleys that were created by volcanic eruptions. The island is still young in geological terms. Simply put, it's still forming. Lava flows, water, volcanoes, raging winds. Iceland has it all. The country's slogan is the land of fire and ice. The island's population is just above 350,000. For comparison, the city of Cleveland in Ohio has more residents than the entire country of Iceland. But the size doesn't always matter. Remember Euro 2016? When England lost to Iceland 2-1, their players became stars overnight, but Icelanders are closer to the stars than you think. The country has a space agency. Yeah, you heard it correctly. Now, this agency actually consists of 2 people who are trying to promote Iceland as a terrestrial analog to Mars. In short, this means that Iceland looks a lot like the red planet. The local duo wants to get space scientists to choose Iceland as a training ground for future astronauts. Their biggest argument is that it's cheaper. Sending people and equipment into space is expensive. Duh! According to Elon Musk, SpaceX launches cost around $2 million. That's way less than a typical NASA launch. A large portion of space research takes place back on Earth. Antarctica is ideal for studying cold and desolate places in outer space. Hawaii is perfect for exploring lava tubes and the composition of rocks. Just imagine the logistics behind going to both of these regions at the same time. This is where Iceland comes into play. It has diverse habitats that are relatively close to each other. So what exactly will future Mars-bound astronauts do in Iceland? To answer this question, let's travel back in time. Nevada wasn't the only place NASA's astronauts visited more than half a century ago. They prepared for walking on the surface of the moon in Iceland too. Their primary objective was collecting rock samples. These can mainly be found near volcanoes and lava fields, and Iceland has plenty of those. Around 60% of the local landscape is rocky and rugged. This makes the island the size of Kentucky feel like another planet. Add that to the fact that 80% of Iceland is uninhabited, and you get the perfect playground for astronauts. And there's another similarity with Mars. In summer, it can seem as if the sun never sets in Iceland. Locals go shopping at 3 a.m. In June, for example, the night can last only 2 hours. Sounds like a perfect open-air party destination. Well, not really. Who would want to party at a freezing temperature of 42 degrees Fahrenheit? That's the average low air temperature in June. Future astronauts spent weeks in Iceland, trying to adjust to these strange conditions. This helps them prepare for the long days on Mars. This is not a figure of speech, since days on the red planet are longer than the ones on Earth by 40 minutes. That's not much, considering the length of days on other planets. On Jupiter, a day is over in just under 10 hours, while a day on Venus equals 243 Earth days. But let's first land on Mars and then think of other planets, shall we? Have you been doing some math in your head? If one day on Mars is 40 minutes longer than on Earth, then how long is a Martian year? Nope, I'm willing to bet your calculations aren't correct. You forgot to factor in an important detail. The planet is farther from the Sun than Earth. This means that a year on Mars lasts 687 days, nearly twice as long as a year on Earth. Sorry, future astronauts, you'll get a birthday cake once every 2 years. There's another minus to the red planet, literally. The planet's average temperature is minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Makes Iceland's climate feel like the tropics, huh? Despite these extreme weather conditions, scientists believe that water once flowed on Mars. And where there's water, there's life. That's why NASA scientists lowered the tiny rover in the middle of a crater that they suspected was once a lake. This is where it stands the greatest chance of finding evidence of life. What about life forms on Mars? Looks like it's not science fiction. The planet has polar caps like Earth, and that's not all. Scientists believe they've even detected snowfall on Mars. Its atmosphere is 100 times thinner than that of our planet. It isn't a breath of fresh air, but it isn't extremely inhospitable like other planets. On Venus, it rains acid, and the temperature is high enough to melt lead. And on Jupiter, there are gigantic storms that rage on for centuries. Makes you fall in love with the blue planet all over again. Even Iceland sounds fun at this point. You might even want to learn Icelandic. If you're successful, then you can even read Old Norse, the language of the Vikings. And you'll know 100 words for wind. This will come in handy as wind speeds on the island can reach up to 40 miles per hour. Out in the open, you have to hold on to a fence or a signpost to stay on your feet. Iceland's climate will make you think twice before moving there. But for astronauts preparing for another world, this place is perfect. Iceland is equally impressive underground. In fact, the island might hold the key to sustaining human life on Mars. The surface of this planet is not very hospitable. The soil is poisonous and abrasive. It can easily cut through an astronaut's suit. But underneath the ground, the living conditions are more tolerable. And Iceland has a real-life model of this potential underground dwelling: lava tubes. Long tunnels carved out by lava making its way to the surface. These maze-like corridors are perfect human habitats. And they're cost-efficient. Nature had already built them for us. Future astronauts can walk through similar lava tubes in Iceland. Who knows? One day, their cautious steps might turn into giant leaps for mankind.
So, you're getting ready for your adventure in the land of ice and fire. But before you switch your phone to Volcano Explorer mode, hear me out. You need to pack properly to get the most out of your trip. Now, never underestimate the Icelandic weather. It doesn't matter if you're going there in May or January, you can expect all seasons in one trip or even one day. If you're going in summer, pack both light and warmer layers and some good hiking boots. You'll definitely need a waterproof and windproof outer layer. Don't be shy to bring an insulated winter jacket. It's always better to take them off than not have it and freeze. One more thing you need to know about the Icelandic summer is that between June 15th and June 30th, you can expect something known as the midnight sun. The sun doesn't set until after midnight, and even then, it barely goes below the horizon, so it looks more like the evening twilight. Unless your accommodation has extra dark and thick curtains, you might have trouble sleeping when it's so light outside. That's why it's a good idea to pack a sleeping mask, and for the daytime, you'll definitely need sunglasses and sunscreen. Or you could just pop by in December when it's only light for 4 hours and 7 minutes a day. Winter temperatures aren't as terrible as you might think, but the snow and wind coming from all directions make things worse. So focus on staying warm and dry. An insulated jacket, another warm layer or two, thermal pants, reflective waterproof pants to stay dry and noticeable in the snows, a good warm hat, and sturdy boots will literally take you a long way. Ice cleats as an add-on will help you stay stable on icy terrains. Spring and fall are pretty short, just like my dad, and the weather is also super unpredictable. So, the same set of items you'd pack for winter will do. Even if you're going to Iceland in the coldest weather, definitely pack a swimsuit. Iceland's sea isn't the warmest in the world, but you'll need that swimsuit for outdoor pools and hot springs the country is full of. Since all the pools are heated with geothermal energy, they're always warm. The locals and tourists swim in all sorts of weather conditions. Yes, even in the snow. The Blue Lagoon is the most famous geothermal spa. It uses seawater coming from around 6,500 feet underground, and it comes with useful earth minerals. Once it gets heated up by a nearby geothermal plant, a mix of ocean and fresh water pours into a lava pool at a temperature of around 102 degrees Fahrenheit. It gets its postcard-worthy turquoise color from the silica in it, reflecting sunlight. Definitely bring a reusable water bottle for the trip. You can refill it with tap water since it's perfectly safe and healthy. The country is full of pure springs and glaciers, and that high-quality water goes to every tap. There are 0 chemicals in it, so it's officially some of the clearest kinds of water in the world. All you have to do is wait a bit when you change from hot to cold water. Hot water also comes to Icelandic homes straight from the spring and is heated by geothermal sources. The sulfur in it makes it smell like rotten eggs. Although it's yucky, it's totally harmless. Bottled water is overpriced and it literally comes from the same tap. Icelanders will have no problem speaking and understanding English, but if you want to feel more like a local, you could bring translation earbuds. Icelandic is pretty difficult to grasp on the go and might sound unusual. The language has less than 500,000 native speakers, but they're super proud of it, and it keeps growing. Instead of borrowing words from other languages for new concepts, they create new words or repurpose some old ones. The Icelandic for computer, for instance, totally translates as the number oracle. There are over 130 ways of saying wind, and 112 of them are written on a wooden walkway from the calmest to the strongest wind, just in case you want to learn them. There are also some concepts the English language just doesn't have. For example, this – window weather. It's the kind of weather that looks good from the inside, but once you step out, you regret your decision. Makes sense to me. In case, for some reason, you were planning to bring a horse to Iceland, stop right there. The Icelandic horse is one of the oldest and purebred horses in the world, with a history of the breed going back to the 10th century. The story goes that the ancestors of today's beauties were carefully selected to be brought to Iceland from Norway during the Viking years, and no one has imported any other horse breeds to Iceland since the 11th century. It is banned by law. This complete isolation helps the Icelandic horses stay super healthy and live a long life. These beauties used to be the only form of transportation in the country. They've adapted to survive in all kinds of weather conditions and have grown, although they still don't look huge. And when you see it, never call it a pony. It can offend the locals. Now, I don't want to be the one to tell you, but your wish won't come true just because you threw a coin in one of Iceland's thermal springs. The signs forbidding throwing coins are all over the place for a good reason. The coins keep hanging in crystal clear waters, ruining the natural look of geysers and pools. Plus, researchers have proved that coins and other trash can change the color of the thermal water for good. That's precisely what happened in Yellowstone. The Morning Glory pool changed its color from tropical blue to green with orange and yellow hues. If you don't want that to happen to the beautiful Icelandic landscapes, then keep the coins for souvenirs or in your pocket. Now, elves are a big deal in Iceland. About half of the population believes in their existence. The local folklore sees elves as the hidden people who live in the lava fields. When someone wants to build something in one of those, they have to take into account the elves' opinions. Yes, these guys have a spokesperson who comes to meetings. Sometimes road construction is even diverted around boulders where the elves live, so not to disturb them. These little guys go house hunting during the winter holiday season. And it is 13 elves called the Yule Lads who bring the young generation of Icelanders their gifts. If you want to learn more about the elves during your trip, you can sign up for Reykjavik's Elf School. You'll get textbooks, a legit elf diploma, and tea with cookies as a bonus. They might seem like a regular photo prop, but these little pyramids of rocks actually have a name and history. The humans of the past used to build cairns to be used as kind of a GPS system long before the concepts of cars and GPS was even created. Travelers marked certain spots along their routes to help other wanderers find the path. They used to be the only way of marking the routes, and you can still find them all over the island. Iceland, of course, has GPS now, but it's illegal to move rocks from the cairns because they're considered an important part of history. Plus, some hikers still use those pyramids for navigation. So, if you randomly build one of those, hikers can easily get lost as they'd follow the wrong route. Oops! Now, if you want to bring a good gift to your new Icelandic friends, a book is a great idea. For many years, the country had the highest rate of publishing books per capita in the world. On average, 1 out of 10 Icelanders publishes a book in their lifetime. There's even a special book-giving holiday. Icelandic sagas go back to the 13th century. Writers create their sagas even on napkins and coffee cups. Each geyser and waterfall has its own tale about heroes and heroines attached to it. You can also scan barcodes on public benches to listen to audiobooks on your smartphone. Cool. Alright, let's go on a world tour. I'll show you the most curious things internet users have found across the globe. Little things light up cultures like nothing else. Let's start in a wonderland world, Asia. First stop, India, the country that will soon surpass China and will become the most populated country in the world. This right here is a street where many training and coaching centers are located. Now, in some states of India, people still widely follow a sustainable tradition of serving meals on banana leaves. A kind Redditor shared what a typical meal looks like. Another user commented that it is also common across the world in Puerto Rico. This right here is a regular day in Sri Lanka fishing. Tic Tacs are so expensive in Sri Lanka that little packs of 8 pieces are a thing. In China, some malls have a husband storage. Women can leave their husbands there so that the boys can enjoy video games while their wives are shopping. It spares women from a lot of whining. Now this is a McDonald's located in an old newspaper stand. Even manholes are a work of art in Asia. Here's one example, a dragon art spotted by a user in Wuxi, China. Turns out, in China, eggs are sold in mesh bags. And of course, Asia has a bunch of snacks with unusual flavors. They even have cucumber-flavored chips. This guy went to get a coffee in Singapore and got it in a bag. Turns out it's quite common in Southeast Asia. Also, they take ice cream sandwiches there quite literally in Singapore. Thing is, they put ice cream between actual toasts. The Redditor confirms that it's weirdly delicious. Would you dare to try? Here's a first look at a city in Japan. A Redditor shared a beautiful photo made at night in Yokohama. Other internet users shared that they felt very safe there, even when walking at night. And this is a photo of a snowfall. I didn't know that in Japan they get that much snow. Turns out, many toilets there have sinks on top of them. The dirty water after you washed your hands is used to flush, which saves Japan millions of gallons of water. They also collect rainwater and then use it to wash the roads. The water in the street canal in Japan is so clean that fish swim there. In Japan, many manholes are beautifully ornated too, and several users shared some of them. These are Japanese rice fields, and this is one of the designs in their cans. A Redditor spotted a tiny house somewhere in Japan. I wish I could have had the tour. They have driverless KFC trucks roaming the street and selling you food. Turns out the Japanese don't have signatures. Instead, each person has a personal stamp that they use to sign documents. And this is a photo of a night bus. I wish every country's public transport was this cozy and comfortable. One Redditor went to see the White Temple in Thailand. You see, the buildings there are so stunning that even the toilet looks like this. This is a mobile 7-Eleven in Thailand. In Vietnam, tour guides can row with their feet only. This Redditor has proof. And now we're off to Australia. Some buses there have special stands for the passengers' surfboards. Since we like traffic lights today, I can't but show you this one. It features Mary Poppins, and it's installed in Queensland, the hometown of P.L. Travers, the author of Mary Poppins. The next country on today's tour is New Zealand. Look at this urban wonder, a new apartment building built over an older house. Also, the citizens of New Zealand enjoy a unique lemonade drink Coca-Cola produces just for them. What a VIP treatment! Now, let's move across the Pacific Ocean to North America. We start in the second biggest country in the world, Canada. One of the most common stereotypes about Canada is that they are very polite. Well, a Redditor posted a photo of a Canadian bus saying sorry for being full. Even the buses are polite there. Another user found an outdoor toilet, but of course dressed for cold weather. And one more user shared this photo. It was so windy in the town that the grass got blown off. As some Redditor commented, "I can't own anything. The wind tried stealing my grass." One more unusual occurrence. A Redditor shared a photo of a huge iceberg passing by. Now let's move to the US and start in the northern state, Alaska. These light pillars are reflections of the ice crystals in the sky. A resident of Alaska opened the front door after a snowstorm. Did you know that the US is the homeland of skyscrapers? Yep, the first skyscraper in the world was built in 1885 in Chicago. The home insurance building had 10 stories. Now, it's not even close to a skyscraper, but that was the start. And look what this Redditor found in Seattle. It's not unfinished work, it's a skyscraper built on top of an 11-story pedestal called Rainier Tower. This is an abandoned diner somewhere in the California desert. Here's another interesting photo from a Redditor. A Mexican restaurant moved to a building where KFC had been. Instead of removing the logo, they just added a sombrero, a mustache, and a poncho. I say, genius! Since we talked about Mexico, let's move there. One user shared a pack of toast bread without any crusts, and another Redditor showed that potato chips go with a small packet of salsa there. Here's a Mexican crosswalk. The man on it has a dog and a hat. And this user shared photos of how his grandma hand-painted a toilet in Mexico. And this toilet brush holder gives me chills. Mexico is a whole different world. Cenotes are caused by erosion in the limestone bedrock, and they hold ground and rainwater. But this Redditor probably didn't expect to see this wonder right by a Costco store. The award for the stadium with the most mesmerizing view probably goes to this one. Turns out, the Bahamas are home to the biggest underwater statue in the world, which is called Ocean Atlas. Here's a photo from a Redditor. It's magnificent. You can even see a woman sitting on its hand for comparison. And here's a curiosity from Belize. Apparently, they sell bagged drinking water there. It's very common in Central and South America. And this user met a grasshopper in Costa Rica. The hand is for comparison. Now, I have a question. What do Costa Rica and Australia have in common? Central America is hot. The average annual temperature there is 81 degrees Fahrenheit. No wonder this taxi in Panama only has controls for cold air. Okay, let's say bye to Central America and see what South America has in store for us. And the first store is in Colombia. A Redditor shared that in Bogota, people are paid for dressing as traffic cones and shaming drivers for parking on the street, which makes them move somewhere else. Having a stroll down the stairs of Brazil doesn't seem easy. You can run into trees like this one. Asia is well known for crazy chocolate flavors, but look what this Redditor found in Brazil. Snickers bars with coconut flavors, passion fruit, and even caramel and bacon. Here's a 20 peso bill from Argentina. It has guanaco on it. We still have to move across the Atlantic and visit Europe and Africa.
Let me continue my world tour, and now we're heading straight to Europe. Let's start our journey in Greece, a place with thousands of years of history. Even in modern days, there are still ancient ruins there that are being carefully preserved, and it's an interesting ride. The airport of Athens has a built-in museum with ancient artifacts. And here's how ancient and modern coexist there. Here's the view of the Acropolis from the street. A Spartan roaming the streets of Greece. A Redditor shared a photo of a modern building built right over the ancient ruins. The visitors can see the ruins through the glass. Greece is also very well known for its cats roaming the streets everywhere. This Redditor spotted a cat guarding the National Bank of Greece. These days, everyone is trying to reduce the usage of plastic. Some use paper straws and some go with glass straws. But this cafe in Greece offered to use macaroni as straws. I'm not sure if it's stupid or genius. Another user went to a restaurant in North Macedonia and got baffled when they served slices of pizza on waffles. Double win, a snack, and no waste. In Romania, vending machines seem to be a thing. This one, for example, is a machine with ham. And here's a better one, a vending machine selling cartons of eggs. Scrambled eggs, probably. Europe is a place where old neighbors are modern, and this combination is mesmerizing. I'll show you. This Redditor shared a photo of a modern basketball court squeezed between 700-year-old walls in Croatia. And here's a photo from inside a grocery store. Look at these old columns. Modern problems require modern solutions. These traffic lights light up the ground so that people who store their phones could notice when the light changes. Italy is a work of art with thousands of years of history. I have quite a bunch of stuff for you from there. Some ruins date back thousands of years, and a lot of that gets preserved. A Redditor shared a photo of a lobby of a hotel that has a glass floor so that the ruins were visible. And these are the railing in an Airbnb. Even street signs are a work of art in Italy. Look at this one. Another Redditor shared even more designs. This Redditor showed a photo of a supermarket that is located in an old theater in Venice. Another user added one more photo of that supermarket. Since we're talking about supermarkets, apparently, pets are allowed there. There are even special carts to carry them. Cities are centuries old, and there are quite a few narrow streets, so post vehicles have to adjust to fit them. Here's one of them. Some cities have canals or are located on islands, so boats are a thing. This is a UPS boat at Murano Island. Europe is packed with countries. The city of Basel in Switzerland is located right on the border with France and Germany, so the airport has 3 exits. You can walk out of it to France, Germany, or Switzerland. Let's walk out in Germany. Look, there's a traffic light with a girl walking a camel. The reasons are a mystery to me because camels aren't really a German thing, but it's cute. Here's another unique streetlight featuring Karl Marx, a famous German philosopher. Back to baffling vending machines. In Germany, you can find vending machines with sausages. Hamburg is Germany's major port city. There's a river that connects it to the North Sea. No wonder there's a drive-through McDonald's for a boat. Look at this design of mineral water that is being sold in the Swiss Alps. A Redditor brought a souvenir from France. These are baguette-shaped pens. Look at this narrow house in Spain. I wonder what it looks like inside, but unfortunately, the Redditor only shared the exterior. In Portugal, cell phone towers are disguised as trees. And this is a bus that can ride the roads and then turn into a boat. A Redditor spotted doors in London that have doorknobs in the center. This seems super inconvenient, but apparently the handle doesn't turn and exists only to pull the door closed. And the metal part with the keyhole has a little handle on the bottom of it. Europe is a historical place. This post box bears the mark of a king ruling over a century ago. Back in the day, red telephone boxes were in high demand. Nowadays, when every person has a cell phone or 2, not so much. So telephone boxes are being used in different ways. This one, for example, is now a smartphone repair shop. Luxembourg is a small but rich country squeezed between France, Germany, and Belgium, and they have baguette vending machines. Let's move north first, to the Netherlands. Farmers border their fields with a strip of flowers and put up a sign with a QR code, where people can pay for picking the flowers. And here's just a weird installation spotted by some Redditor. In Denmark, in Aarhus, a city founded by the Vikings in the 8th century, you can find traffic lights with Vikings pictured on them. Some trash cans in Swedish subways have a separate space for cans. Homeless people can pick them up and exchange the cans for some cash. There's a giant statue of a silver moose in Norway. And these are signs on bathroom stalls depicting reindeer. Apparently, Finnish people are as polite as Canadians. On the bus, they have a button to thank the bus driver. Also, a Redditor spotted a raccoon pattern on a bus seat. We all know rocking horses. Most of you probably had one in your early days. Well, Finnish little people have rocking moose. Many people come to Iceland hoping to see the northern lights. A Redditor had a phone in the hotel which had a special button to wake the guest up when the northern lights appear. Lithuanians sometimes put fake police cars on the sides of the road to combat road speeding. Europe has been ruled by kings and queens for centuries. Even today, many countries like the UK, the Netherlands, Spain, Denmark, Belgium, and some other countries have monarchs. So, no wonder that there are hundreds of castles scattered across Europe. Poland doesn't have any monarchs these days, but it still has 500 castles. Here's a warning sign for ghosts next to one of them. In Wrocław, all landmarks have a model so that visually impaired people could touch and see them too. There's also a statue of Darth Vader in one Polish city. In reality, it's a statue of a Polish magnate who supervised the construction of a port. But from time to time, locals dress the statue in Lord Vader's costume. This sign in Poland specifically prohibits bikes, tractors, and horses to go on a highway. In some places, there's a separate line on the sidewalk for people who are walking and staring at their phones. And now we travel across the Atlantic to Africa. This is Dune 7 in Namibia, the 7th biggest dune in the world. It's as tall as the Empire State Building. An internet user shared this photo. Someone in Tanzania put a literal penthouse on top of the building. I did some research and found out that it's a hotel. Still doesn't explain the roof, but I'm totally buying it. Maybe it's marketing. Drivers in Mozambique should be careful and watch out for elephants. And this is a sign from South Africa. Watch out for penguins. And another one that asks to baboon-proof the trash bins. So baboons are the raccoons of South Africa. Trees growing through the roads aren't surprising anymore, but this is a palm tree in Morocco growing through multiple balconies. A Redditor shared a photo of a runaway horse in Israel returning to the backyard in an urban area. Urban horse encounters are relatively common in the country. A hotel in Turkey served a whole honeycomb for breakfast to this Redditor.
In India, some people have tasty chickpea and tomato curry for breakfast. It's also accompanied by puri, deep-fried flat bread. Try to say that fast. It's hollow in the middle and gets puffed up with steam when it's heated up. Some South Africans eat putu pap for breakfast. It's a sort of oatmeal, but it's made from maize and water. This dish can be eaten throughout the day, but if you're having it for breakfast, it's paired with milk and sugar. Senegalese coffee is nothing like a tall Americano. The powder they use to brew this drink is made from coffee beans, grains of saline pepper, and cloves. It's way spicier than the good old pumpkin spice latte and gives you way more energy. Over in Morocco, people prefer drinking mint tea. For breakfast, they grab a couple of freshly cooked flatbreads. They're layered and can be served with jam or honey, but sometimes you can find one stuffed with veggies or even meat. The chickpea soup called lablani is a typical breakfast dish in Tunisia. It can be pretty spicy thanks to all the onion, cumin, and herbs they cook it with. You might get a poached egg on the side, if you're lucky. In Nigeria and some neighboring countries, people have fried bean cakes for breakfast. The main ingredients are black-eyed peas spiced up with dried chili, fresh onions, and fresh red chili pepper. These cakes are deep-fried and are a popular street food. Korean breakfasts are usually pretty filling. They're made up of many banchan, which are basically side dishes. There's kimchi, a sort of fermented cabbage, a rolled omelet, marinated veggies, and jun, a sort of pancake. Wow! A Japanese breakfast can seem a bit more like lunch or dinner in other countries. You know, soup, rice, salmon, even pickled veggies. In Jamaica, people eat saltfish and ackee for breakfast. Ackee is an exotic fruit similar to lychee with a soft and creamy texture. One more tiny detail, it's kind of illegal in the US. It's mostly because the seeds are toxic, but you can eat the flesh safely as long as it's fully ripe. Better know the difference. Maybe the world's craziest breakfast sandwich ever comes from the Netherlands. They have sandwiches with candy sprinkles on them. Right, it's just sprinkles on top of buttered bread. Hagelslag, as it's called, means hailstorm, and it comes in various flavors: chocolate, vanilla, and fruit. A German breakfast might seem kind of heavy if you're used to just having a bowl of oatmeal. We're talking bread rolls, an assortment of cheeses and meats, and if need be, they can top it off with an egg or two. Coffee is the drink of choice to wash down this hearty meal. Oatmeal lovers, head to Finland. The traditional breakfast of this wonderful country consists of oatmeal they call puuru. It's served with fresh or sometimes frozen berries, sugar, and milk. The Italian breakfast is definitely not the main meal of the day. They might grab a cornetto, which is basically a croissant, maybe with a sweet filling, and a cappuccino. By the way, Italians usually only drink cappuccinos in the morning. And if you ever order a latte in Italy, you'll get a glass of milk. What we call latte in English is a cafe latte in Italy. Muesli is enjoyed all over the world, but especially in Switzerland. A typical breakfast muesli consists of oat flakes, raisins, dried fruits, nuts, usually mixed together with yogurt. In Sweden, people eat typical breakfast sandwiches called smörgås. It's a generously buttered slice of bread with some sort of topping. It can be ham, fish, or cheese, and it usually has some cucumbers, lettuce, or tomatoes thrown on there. Many people like it with hard-boiled eggs. People in Sweden are crazy about filter coffee. It tastes so good. The French breakfast is perfect for bread lovers. They have a full range of yummy breads and buns, and yup, they got that croissant thing that most people can't pronounce right. Hey, did I nail it? Maybe put a little French honk on it. Croissant. Get yourself some plain bread and some butter and jam on top, or opt for pain au chocolat. The most common drink is coffee, but many people prefer juice instead. An Argentinian breakfast can be similar to the French one. They have pastries and coffee for breakfast too. Medialunas, which is half moon in English, look a whole lot like croissants. They're just a bit smaller and sweeter. If you're not a fan of sweet pastries, grab a piece of toast called a tostada. And if coffee isn't your thing, just have a glass of orange juice. Yogurt, cereals, and eggs are mostly reserved for tourists. If you ever want to try a traditional Mexican breakfast, cook chilaquiles. Cut a bunch of corn tortillas into pieces and simmer them in salsa. The tortillas get a bit soft. Next, add some fixins: avocado, soft cheese, even chicken. Put some rice and beans on the side, and buen provecho. Want something lighter? Mexico has awesome pastries. There's one that's shaped like a shell, and one that looks like two ears stuck together. A Peruvian breakfast looks really exotic for those who've never been there. One of the traditional dishes is tacacho con cecina. Hope I got that right. It's basically roasted plantain with bits of pork. It's a popular type of street food, too. The two most important things for a Brazilian breakfast are bread and, not exactly a toughie, coffee. The favorite kind of bread for many Brazilians is the French roll, which should be generously buttered before eating and might be followed by a few cold cuts. Tropical fruits like papaya aren't exotic at all in Brazil, so don't be surprised to see them on your table when you travel to Rio. Colombians have dozens of cool breakfast recipes. In Bogota, the capital, you can find changua, which is egg and milk soup with cilantro and stale bread softened in the broth. Another hearty dish is a calentando, made of reheated rice or bean leftovers, served with sausages, avocado, and eggs. In Costa Rica, people usually eat rice and beans for breakfast too. Surprise, surprise. Unlike in Colombia, Costa Ricans grill plantains. They're like bananas but a lot less sweet, instead of sausages. Drinks are simple: coffee or juice. Getting hungry yet? One more country where rice for breakfast is super common is Malaysia. The way they make it is really cool though. It's cooked in coconut milk and served with a variety of side dishes. It can be a boiled egg, a cucumber, anchovies, or even peanuts. Eggs in the form of an omelet and cake filling, deep-fried dough sticks softened in warm soy milk, twisted pancakes stuffed with veggies. If any of that sounds yummy to you, you should try a Taiwanese breakfast at least once. Wash it down with a variety of warm soy milks. There's plain or black, which is milk seasoned with sesame powder and peanuts. A Hong Kong breakfast wouldn't be complete without its very own milk tea. It's all about the technique they use to brew it. The sock-looking cloth that filters it is really thick. When the black tea finally comes out the other end, don't forget to add some evaporated milk and sugar to get that authentic creamy flavor. Now, don't get this one wrong. If you see sausages, eggs, and roasted meat for breakfast, it doesn't mean it's an English breakfast. Take a closer look. See that rice? Sweet bacon marinated in brown sugar and soy sauce, and a cup of hot chocolate. Welcome to the Philippines, and enjoy your meal. It's scrumptious. If you ever travel to Indonesia, don't miss your chance to try some black rice coconut milk-based porridge for breakfast. Disclaimer, it's actually not black, it's more purple. It's called, I'm gonna try this, bubur ketan hitam. Was I even close? This stuff is especially yummy when topped with sliced bananas and cinnamon. They also have papeda, an oatmeal thing made of sago flour. It's starchy, sticky, and looks like pudding, or slime. People in Myanmar are used to eating a hearty breakfast soup called mohinga. It's bursting with flavor. It has ginger, fish paste, lime juice, chili pepper, cilantro, and onions. The soup's made with catfish and even has noodles in it. Salty, sweet, spicy, and sour, all at the same time. If there was a contest for the biggest breakfast in the world, the Irish would take the grand prize. Just think, a traditional Irish breakfast has bacon, white pudding, black pudding, hash browns, fried eggs or scrambled eggs, a couple of sausages, beans, and probably some fried liver. Already figured out how to burn up all those calories?
What's that noise? You rub your eyes and head to the bathroom. The sound of splashing in your toilet woke you up in the middle of the night. You get out of bed and turn on the bathroom lights. You try to find the source of the sound and realize that it's coming from your toilet. You left the lid down, so you don't know if there's something inside. You're trembling, unsure if you should open the lid. The splashing sound is more intense. You grab a broom, slowly lift the lid, and see a rat trying to escape. You slam the lid down and call pest control to handle it. Don't worry, not every toilet will have rats coming out of them. But to know how rats can reach your toilet, you need to understand the super agile and dexterous body it has. A rat can fit in any hole, just as long as its head can go through it first. So, if you see a rat as big as your foot, try to look through every small opening in your house. Chances are, if its head went through it, then the rest of its body did too. Their bones are flexible and can take the pressure of fitting through a narrow space without hurting themselves. If a rat crawls out of the toilet, that means it was stuck in the sewers and found itself in the pipes that lead to your house. The design of a toilet is ingenious and revolutionary. The flushing mechanisms are there to make our lives easier so that nothing flushed goes back out. There's water inside that comes from the piping, which means that the rat must have worn a diving suit and swam all the way there. Sorry to burst your bubble, but rats are incredibly good swimmers. They can swim for hours without getting tired, and can swim underwater and hold their breath when they need to. So, it's most likely the rat was lost in the sewers and found an opening leading to your pipes. With nowhere to go, it was swimming through the complex piping foundation in your toilet until it reached the basin. Their bodies are flexible and can even pass through little openings if they have to, just as they would on dry land. Pest control arrives at the scene and takes out the rat. They make sure no other rat problems occur and clean the rest of the scene. If you live in marshland areas, similar to that of Florida, then chances are you heard that alligators live in the sewers. That may be an exaggeration, but it is possible to find other reptiles at the bottom of your toilet. Sometimes, lizards can cause a ruckus if you're in a hurry to do your business. Lizards, like many other creatures, also find themselves in certain situations where they're hungry or seeking shelter. Naturally, seeing a lizard in your toilet will creep you out. But don't worry, you can always call pest control to move it to a better environment suited for it. After a while, your bathroom is clean once again. They did a thorough check of your piping and found that nothing was out of the ordinary. The next day, you slowly walk to your bathroom to see if anything is lurking at the bottom. Your heart is pounding and you're sweating. You open the lid and don't find anything. You flush the toilet once more, just to make sure there's nothing that will jump out and scare you. A few minutes pass, and it seems clear. You get a strong feeling that nothing is happening, but your dog keeps barking at the bathroom door. You go inside and lift the lid open. You instantly slam it shut and grab your dog away from it. You call the pest control again and show them what your dog found. You can handle rats and lizards, but this takes the cake. The pest control grabs a bag and puts a large snake inside. Yes, snakes sometimes crawl out of toilets in different places around the world. They also find themselves lost in a network of pipes and seek dark places when they're not basking in the sun. Snakes and lizards are cold-blooded creatures, meaning they need external heat to keep them warm. Mammals, on the other hand, are warm-blooded, which means that their bodies can regulate the heat for them. A reptile's body heat is generated by basking under the sun and lasts till nighttime. So this snake just wanted to escape the heat and find a way out. They're also surprisingly good swimmers. Some snakes have evolved to live in open water and are referred to as sea snakes. The tips of their tails resemble that of an eel, but rest assured, they're snakes to the core. Don't worry, you won't find these poisonous, slithering creatures in your toilets. They live far from metropolitan areas or anywhere inland. There was a case of a possum crawling out of a toilet in Australia. Possums can grow to the size of a house cat or a small dog, but this possum was just a little baby. Experts haven't seen a case like this in more than 30 years upon extracting it. After they took it out, they dried it and kept it warm. Also unexpectedly, the baby possum showed no signs of stress after discovering that it had been in somebody's toilet for quite some time. The experts then did some further tests and found out that it's clean and healthy as a horse, or in this case, a possum. There's no telling when you'll find a rodent or a reptile in your toilet, but there are plenty of insects out there. Spiders can't swim, so they won't be diving through the piping networks. However, they will still seek shelter and see your toilet as a great opportunity to create a web network to catch insects like roaches, flies, mosquitoes, and so on. Also down under in Australia, black widows lurk around trying to find the best place to set up their web to catch prey. It's no surprise to see them living in a toilet that naturally resembles a cave. Seeing any spider in your toilet is already terrifying enough, but finding one of the most poisonous spiders in your bathroom is a whole new level of shock. If that happens, you must be living in an area where black widows are abundant and easily sneak into your house. They're mainly found in places like kitchen cupboards or small corners of a garage. It's especially dangerous to stick your hand in the dark places where you can't see anything, in case a black widow gets annoyed and lets out its anger at you. Baby black widows don't resemble the fierce-looking adults, and it's better to watch out for the females, since they're more dangerous than the males. It's not easy to distinguish between the two, but just a heads up, the best way to identify a black widow is the red-colored hourglass on its body. There are different species of black widows, so some of the hourglass markings might look quite different, and some might have different colors, like orange. Either way, stay back when you see a black widow. And contrary to the scare that you might find a black widow in your house, they're mainly found outdoors. After all these hectic pest control problems, you decide to completely revamp your bathroom and the plumbing. You get some professionals to put a camera through the pipes to spot any holes or nests that might spawn some creatures. Next, you make sure to keep your toilet clean by disinfecting it with proper detergents. If you can't find some or don't have the time to get one, you can use white wine vinegar or baking soda. Use those fresheners with a brush and start scrubbing frequently. That way, it'll be clean and have a nice smell whenever you flush. Another precaution to take is to keep your toilet dry. Some of these pests like the humidity, which is why they enjoy bathrooms so much. Make sure to dry up some still water lying around, or wipe the spilled water from after you shower. Check for leaks around the sink or anything where water can drip. If there aren't any windows around, then make sure to keep the door open so that the humidity won't be contained. Constantly spray your bathroom with a bug repellent to maximize the effect. This can also be applied to kitchens where water leaks can be a problem. Little critters can also crawl up sinkholes and can cause a mess, or worse, an infestation.
People living in Hawaii need to make at least twice the average salary in the rest of the US to live comfortably. Those who aren't ready to pay $5 for a gallon of milk have to look for happiness elsewhere. And year after year, the state makes it to the top lines of the population loss rating. While the local middle class is leaving, Hawaii is turning into a heaven for billionaires. Just 37 of them already own 11% of all the private land in the Aloha State. Larry Ellison, co-founder of the Oracle Corporation, bought 98% of the island of Lanai, including the grocery store, the only gas station, and the community newspaper, all for a nifty sum of $300 million. This makes him the boss and landlord of everyone on the island. Mark Zuckerberg, the Meta founder and CEO, is building a huge compound on Kauai with more than a dozen buildings, at least 30 bedrooms and bathrooms, a tunnel leading to a 5,000 square feet underground bunker, and 11 tree houses connected by intricate rope bridges. The local residents with ancestral rights to this land lost in court and had to put it up for auction. The Malaysian tycoon Kvek Leng Khan owns a third of the island of Molokai through his business empire. Of course, these and some of the world's richest people create new jobs and invest in development projects on the islands. But still, nearly 2/3 of the locals believe that their state is being run for tourists at the expense of the residents. A lot of famous people like to live in Wailea and Makina in Maui because it's peaceful and gives them the privacy they want. Oprah Winfrey has a big house up in the local hills. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, reportedly bought a huge house by La Perouse Bay for $78 million. Other famous people who live in Maui include Clint Eastwood, Mick Fleetwood, Jim Carrey, and Alice Cooper. When you visit Maui, you can see a special Hall of Fame display at the airport showing those celebrities. It's supposed to celebrate their ties with the island, but the local people feel like it only highlights the huge gap between the new super wealthy residents and the local people who can barely afford to live there. As the rich and famous keep buying property across Hawaii, home prices continue to rise. It's more expensive to buy a house here than in Washington, D.C. or California. Part of the reason for such high pricing is how the land itself is formed. Hawaii is bigger than most people think, but it's made up of lots of separate islands that are spread far apart. Even though the islands are big, not all of the land can be used to build houses or neighborhoods. Unlike most of the US, which has a lot of flat land and gentle hills, much of Hawaii is made up of steep, rocky mountains and rough terrain. This kind of land is very hard to build on or live on. Because of this, most of the people on Hawaii, about 1 million of them, live on the island called Oahu. The other islands, like the Big Island, have far fewer people. There isn't enough land for everyone, and that makes it hard for people who have lived in Hawaii their whole lives to afford a place to live. Tourism makes up 21% of the state's economy. Most of the visitors come from the United States and Japan. Tourists bring in tons of money, but there's a problem. Depending too much on tourism can be risky for Hawaii. In the recent years, because of we all know what happened, a health rule called the Conditional Sail Order stopped cruise ships from coming to Hawaii for health safety reasons. Many other tourist activities, like visiting beaches or attending events, were also shut down. With fewer visitors, Hawaii earned a lot less money, which hurt the economy. To avoid this problem in the future, Hawaii has been trying to make money in other ways besides tourism. One idea is to invest more in fishing, but this hasn't been easy. At some point, there was too much fishing going on here, and now Hawaii has to bring in 63% of its seafood from other places instead of catching it nearby. There are farms here that grow pineapples, macadamia nuts, coffee, and produce milk. But now, farming isn't as important as it was 100 years ago. Probably one of the reasons is that it's more profitable to sell the land for houses or hotels than to use it for farming. This change made Hawaii even more dependent on tourism and made living in the Aloha State so very pricey. Honolulu is reported to be the 7th most expensive city to live in the US. A family of 4 spends around $8,000 a month here, and a single adult will have to pay, on average, $2,500. Food alone costs around $500 a person for 1 month. Most of the food in Hawaii, about 85 to 90%, comes from faraway places. Since it has to travel more than 2,500 miles to get there, around 1/3 of all the food spoils along the way, especially because Hawaii is warm and humid. This waste makes things more expensive because stores know they'll lose some of their products and charge more to cover their losses. There aren't as many stores competing with each other. If stores don't compete, they have no reason to lower their prices. On top of that, they have to pay a lot for things like rent and electricity, so they raise their prices to make up for those costs. Speaking of electricity, an average bill is around $200, which is almost 90% higher than the national average. Yep, the Aloha State has the highest energy costs in the country. And perhaps that's why people in Hawaii use the least amount of electricity compared to other states. But their bills are still much higher. The main reason is the price per unit of electricity, called a kilowatt hour. 1 unit of electricity costs almost 40 cents. To compare, Utah has the cheapest rate at just 10.91 cents. It's so expensive in Hawaii because most of the electricity comes from oil, and that oil has to be shipped to the islands. Since Hawaii depends so much on oil, energy costs go up and down with oil prices. On top of all that, the income tax is some of the highest in the country. A quarter of all households in Hawaii spent more than their income in 2024. To survive, people used savings and credit cards and cut expenses. They also had to work more hours or get an extra job. They were forced to sell their belongings and borrow money from relatives, banks, or other lenders. Almost half of residents are in the category called ALICE, and it has nothing to do with Alice in Wonderland. It means asset limited, income constrained, employed. More than 1 in 3 residents lives below the ALICE annual income threshold. And then there's also legislation that further complicates things for Hawaii. It says that any goods shipped between places in the US must be carried on ships that are owned, built, and run by Americans. This makes shipping much more expensive because US ships and crews cost a lot more than ships from other countries. Most of the world's ships don't follow these rules because they're registered in countries like Panama. Because of this, Hawaii can still get goods from places like East Asia using cheaper ships, but if they want something from the mainland US, it costs way more money. In fact, this law costs Hawaii over $1 billion every year. This law also makes it really hard for Hawaii to grow businesses because everything is so expensive. The cost of insurance is also going up. This is because the islands are hit by natural disasters like hurricanes and storms more often now. All of this adds up to making life in Hawaii even more expensive. But even despite all that, the state steadily lands high in studies on well-being. Even people who can barely afford a living are mostly happier, or at least less unhappy in Hawaii than in other states. I guess the strong community support, a clean and fantastically beautiful environment, and the ability to have beach parties all year round make up for many hardships.